Good morning, and welcome to the third episode of Sovereign Rebels. So, this morning, I've been really dragging my feet. I've been wanting to do an episode sooner than I have because it was 2 weeks ago when I did the last one. And but I've learned to trust that, kind of like what Abraham Hicks is always talking about. If you don't feel not up to, but if you're not like really excited about doing something, then hold off until you get that excitement. So this morning, yeah, I was just telling a friend yesterday, like, I just don't feel like doing this. I want to do it, but I'm just like, I don't have the energy. So anyway, I woke up this morning and now I have the energy. So I am doing the episode this morning. And this one is going to be on the role of divine comedy in on our spiritual path, our spiritual awakening, our spiritual development, and as well, one of my favorites, past lives and how to access past lives. So in the last episode on Hendrix, I mentioned Red House and how Hendrix weaved in humor at the end of the song when his girlfriend left him, and then he says, "Well, she doesn't love me no more. I know her sister will." So I had mentioned just how good he was at weaving in humor. So anyway, and then I also said, his message in that is about, yeah, shit happens in your life, but you got to get back on the saddle again and get back into life because there's something around the corner. So you always have to be careful about what you say because, yeah, since then shit's been happening. I have no hot water right now. Anyway, I won't list all the things, but I live in an old house in the country. And so living in the country has its challenges. I've been here 22 years, but I love it. And so I've accepted the fact that it's not for the faint-hearted at times, that so you just got to roll with it when it happens. So anyway, so that happened. And now, yeah, I haven't had cold water. Hopefully it'll be back or I've only got cold water. I don't have hot water. So hopefully I'll be able to get the hot water in a few days. So anyway, something happened on Friday, and enter Monty Python. And it just came out of the blue. And I've always been a big Monty Python fan. And and I've got my own DVD, The Holy Grail. So anyway, I pulled it out and I started watching it again. And I watched it again. I watched it 3 times. And I thought, man, I know all these, iconic lines, but this time it was even better. It was so soul deep, the laughter that I felt. And I was killing myself to the point, when you get where your cheeks are hurting and your sides are hurting because you're just laughing so hard. So anyway, so there was that, and I was feeling great. And of course, being a scientist, I know the importance of endorphins, which are released in laughter. It's one of the activities where endorphins are released. How important that is in your overall health. So I just gave into it, and it was a blast. And then on Friday night, I woke up in the middle of the night, and I was really concerned about somebody I care about, and so all of a sudden, this scene unfolded in my mind. And it was nuts. It was kind of like my own version of combining a reality scene in a friend's place with John Cleese pirouetting in his chainmail armor in the background around the room. And then I was in the character of Agnes from Despicable Me with her voice, and I was wearing chainmail that was too large on me, and I was tripping all over the place. And I had this plate of cookies, 2 glasses of milk for my friend and I, and then I tripped, and there were cookies all over the place, and John Cleese was pirouetting around the room, trying to sidestep the cookies, and at one point he picks up the cookie and he eats it. Anyway, this crazy scene just unfolded in my mind. And it was like I was a script writer, and I have no desire to be a script writer, but something cracked open this week. Like, I mean, I've always appreciated humor, and I think I can be a little funny myself at times, but this went beyond. So this really opened like another portal, and it's like, and I was speaking with this friend of mine about it, and it's like, he was saying, it's like a portal to divine comedy. So, soak it up, use it, and really bask in it. So that's what's been happening over the last couple of days. And so then when I woke up and yesterday, and there was no hot water. I was really pissed for a second, and then I just went right back to that whole elevated state from the Divine Comedy that I'm speaking about. And it's just like, really, so I have to boil water on the stove for a few days until I can get the plumber in here. Because that's the other thing too, living out in the country, you don't, yeah, the plumber's not working on the weekend. So now to the past lives. So I've been wanting to talk about this from the beginning, just because of the crazy power that you can wield in your own life, like, for solving problems, for getting what you want, in terms of manifestation. So I want to. Oh wait, there's one more thing that I do want to mention before I get into the past lives. Franco Romero, for those who of you who aren't familiar with him, he has a channel, and I think it's just Romero. He wrote a book called, and he's always saying this. Let me get it right. The spiritual, no, the closet. Oh God, I can't remember now. It's the closet spiritualist. Anyway, his name's Franco Romero, and I'm sure you can find him online. And he talks about the inner child, and in order to enter the kingdom of heaven. So, kingdom of heaven, though, is just like, it's a metaphor for your higher self, like your ultimate self, your actualized self. Where it is that we're all trying to get to, fifth dimension consciousness, however you want to put it. And so he says that the key to doing that is to really become one, integrated with your inner child, and that the key, like, to opening that door is your imagination. Like, just let it go nuts, let it go wild. And so when this happened the other night, with this scene that I was talking about with Cookies and John Cleese, and me taking on the voice of Agnes from Despicable Me, that was my inner child in full throttle. And I really came to appreciate now what Franco's talking about the inner child, and getting in touch with your inner child, and integrating the three main aspects of our spiritual selves, which is the inner child, the divine feminine, and the divine masculine. And so now, rather than it just staying in my head and being theory and abstract and everything, I'm really feeling it in my whole being. Like, I really understand the role of the inner child and imagination. And of course, the big thing is that we question, because we're so 3D and fear-based in this paradigm of reality on Earth, that we question everything. It's like, like in Bohemian Rhapsody, I can't remember the lyrics specifically. Is this the real thing, or is this just fantasy? And that's been going through my mind a lot lately. I keep hearing that part of Bohemian Rhapsody in my head. So anyway, now on to past lives. So I first started with past lives. I've been practicing Buddhism since the 80s. And even though I knew that Buddhism was based on eternal existence, and that it's eternal, that we come back, that we have multiple lives, infinite numbers of lives, but I was never called to explore my past lives. And so then, like with everything, when you're up against the wall, or as Robert Schwartz says, when the universe hits you across the head with a 2x4, then you wake up and you pay attention and you start to try and figure out what's going on here, whatever the situation is. So the back about 15 years ago, I was facing another potential life or death situation. And because I was commuting at that time, I still have the same job, but I now work from home. But my commute was like 270 kilometers every day, 135 each way. And so, and plus I was raising two boys. And at that time they were 15 and 9. And so it was hard. It was really hard. And on top of it, I started going through menopause. And I'm the only woman in my family, as far as I know, who has suffered the full spectrum of menopause shit. And that includes really, really extreme sleep problems. So it was to the point where I was, when I mean it was life or death, it was because I was driving these long commutes and I was falling asleep at the wheel because I was only getting like a couple hours sleep a night. So I had my director at that time was so sweet. She was so supportive. She said, you know, you can always go into my office, shut the door, and take a nap if you need to. And I'll never forget that. That was so beautiful that she did that. So anyway, I realized really need to figure out why can't I sleep, because I did feel that it was beyond what the normality was for menopausal symptoms. So anyway, I found Brian Weiss online. Actually, it was Sonia Choquette first. I heard her talk about it. And she said that for doing a past life regression, it's like a meditation. And she suggested that it's best to go into the regression, to go to a past life with a specific question that you have. So mine was, why can't I sleep? So I wrote it on a yellow Post-it, had it on my lap, and then I found Brian Weiss online. I've mentioned him before. He had a regression on YouTube that was about 20 minutes long. And so I did his regression and I had the piece of paper and it was just, why can't I sleep? So as soon as I went into it, I immediately went to this scene. I was in the body of a man who was, without going into all the details, the first scene was I was by a campfire. It was late at night and it was, it was completely dark. And I had a tin cup of coffee in my hand and I was sipping the coffee and I could see outstretched in front of me my legs. I was a large man. I was a big man. And I had these cowboy boots on, square-toed cowboy boots. Now this is significant. I'll mention it again in a moment. So anyway, then I start to nod off, and as soon as I nod off, I scream, "No! I have to stay awake!" And then bam, I was out of it, and I was back into this consciousness, and it's like, wow, okay, what was that? And so as I'm processing it throughout the day, I'm picking up things about it, and what I mean about the square-toed cowboy boots. I've always felt like a cowboy inside. Even as a little kid, I used to pretend I was a cowboy. So I have multiple pairs of cowboy boots, plus a cowboy hat. And I don't live in Texas. I live in the north. So it's something that's been in me naturally since I was a kid. Anyway, my favorite pair of cowboy boots is an old beat-up square-toed pair that have like the metal. It looks like a real pair of cowboy boots. And I picked them up one day at Value Village. And when I saw them, I just was like a little kid in a candy shop and had to have them. So, and I think I even picked them up for like $10. And I've been treating them like gold ever since. So that was really significant. And Brian Weiss talks about this. He says that many of the things that we're really attached to in this lifetime, like just little idiosyncrasies, like me with cowboy boots. And plus, I used to pretend when I was a kid that I was Texan. I used to do a Texan drawl. And it was the only accent I ever remember pretend like using as a kid when I would go into character as a little kid when I was pretending. So these are the kind of things to look out for. But the best way to, most important thing, that night was the first time I slept through the night. It was incredible. So that, because it was such an extreme situation, that got my attention. And so that was it was 2010. Yeah, it was in 2010. And so I've been doing them ever since. And I went through a period where I did multiple past life regressions. I went back to about 17 over the following years, but I haven't been serious about it in the last few years because then I've been going on to other lineages, other histories, interdimensional, soul, galactic, and in between lives, I've done in between lives too. Robert Schwartz is one he's got a few books out on it. So the thing is that with the past lives, and I've had friends come with me. I've only had one friend who I've done the regressions with, and it's been successful. She's gone into it very easily. And I think the only reason why is because she's open to it. She's another fellow scientist. She works in the same field as I do. But you have to be open. That's been my experience. I don't know. And if you are doubting, the validity of it or whatever, I would just write it on a piece of paper and say, even though I have doubt, I believe. And it works because I've done that for many things when I'm doubting something. It's like, okay, I've got this doubt. I don't care. I believe anyway. And it works. So I would take something that is really challenging you and a relationship. I've had those too. Like, you know, really difficult relationships, and you try and you try and you try, and it's like, what the hell is going on here? And so that I've done as well. And that has been very powerful. Like one person in particular, I saw 8 different lives that I had with him, and it just kept recycling and recycling. And again, Brian Weiss talks about this. And so it's so potent. And then recently, though, because of I now want to become more involved with addressing, as I've mentioned before in the other episodes, with addressing child abuse and child sex trafficking and the trauma. And well, first of all, to stop it. Like, not, rather than, doing it as a therapeutic afterwards, like just raising awareness so that we prioritize it. Like, this has got to be denormalized. I mean, people will say, well, it's not normalized. Well, if it's occurring as rampantly as it is, if it's coming out in the news, like from all different, like all over the world, it's normalized, and we have to denormalize it. So anyway, so yeah, of course, I've looked back to see over my past lives as well as galactic lineages. I won't get into that today. I'll just focus on human past lives because it could go on and on because there's a lot to it. But for human past lives, there are 2 lives in particular that I'll talk about. This episode might go over about another 10 minutes rather than 20 minutes, just because I think it's important to talk about these 2. And to do it justice, I need to give it a bit of time. Okay, so 2 lives. One was in the 1600s, the other one 1700s, and my role with children in those 2 lives were I ended up getting executed for it in each life. So let me start with the first one. The first one, and I was told about this life by psychics, card readers, back, the earliest was sometime in the 80s. So it's been like about 40 years. And never really paid much attention to it. So I was a monk, and I was a monk in an like a monastery orphanage in Mexico. And that particular life has been, like I said, psychics had told me about it. And even an old boyfriend picked up on it once in the 80s when I was talking about it, and he said something about it. So that life, I think, out of all the lives I've been in, is definitely one of the most important ones that I was drawn to really look at it. So in that life, what happened was I was a monk, and I can see myself very clearly what my physical presence was like, with the robes, the cassock that I was wearing. And one other thing, one day in particular, the way I access that life, and with me it seems like it's always a physical symptom. There's something I'm going through as a physical symptom that it just, the volume's turned up and I have no choice but to say, okay, let me go to the past life where this started. And so with this one, what happened is I was working one afternoon, and I just felt this constriction around my throat. Oh yeah, it was cold in the house. That was it. And I had put on a scarf, and but the scarf felt like it was choking me, and I just said, this is ridiculous. So anyway, I sat down, did the regression, and I went to this life, and I was this monk, and I was in Mexico in this orphanage, and I had all these beautiful indigenous Native American or Native Mexican children around me, and they were orphans. And I was having so much fun. Like, there was just this feeling of joy. I loved these children so much. And they were little. These were little children, like probably 3 years old, all the way up to about 10 years old. And they, and I was teaching them how to read and write. And the head honcho of the orphanage, the Monsignor, and I could see him in his white garb, kept giving me hell and saying, "Don't do this. We don't want them to know how to read and write." And the reason why is because the Monsignor was in the pockets of the local landowners, and these kids were the labor force. They were the eventual labor force as slaves, even though they weren't officially slaves, but that's how they were treated, by these feudal landlords. So I was warned to not educate these children, that they were going to form the labor force for the farms. And then the next scene I saw was that I was hanging. They hung me in front of the children. And the children were huddling around and they were terrified. And they did that deliberately so as to break the children and control them, to create that awful, awful trauma, to see the one person who loved them so much and was working to uplift them to be so brutally murdered in front of them. And so I could feel it. It was like I was in my body and I could feel the noose around my neck. And I could even feel like just the body release, like the urine running down my legs. I could feel everything. It was like I was right there as I was hanging. And so I came out, and so that one was extremely powerful. And this all happens within like minutes. It's not long, like it just unfolds. At least that's the way it is for me. Some people will actually get like a whole movie scene that's much longer or just a flash. So it's really different for each individual. But so anyway, what happened? I came out of that regression, and I've not had that choking feeling around my neck since. And like I even wear, like I'm not wearing one today, but I'll usually have like the jewelry that I make. I make my own crystal jewelry, stones, and I make them in choker style. Like it's not hanging down; it's like tight around my neck. So that's significant. So that is what happens. That's the power of doing past life regressions, is that there is embedded trauma in your spiritual self, and it's embedded in your physical body too, like showing up as these symptoms. And but I really encourage you, read Dr. Weiss's books. He's got a number of them, and mine are all like heavily highlighted with different colors because I went over them again and again and again. And because he explains all of this in such wonderful detail. He's really, really, really good with educating people about it, how to do it. So then the second one about children was, it was in the 1600s, and I was a 16-year-old girl named Emily. And I was in a Quaker community in New England, and I was, again, a lot like I am in this, like very free-spirited, very much appreciative of music and dancing and just having fun, being one with nature. And so in this village, I had a really cool connection with the children in the village, and I was teaching them like reading, and although reading literacy was not common then, but for whatever reason, I was literate at that time, and just really joyous and dancing with them. I remember scenes of seeing myself dancing with them, holding their hands and just like kind of doing a ring around the posy dance, and just very joyous. So I did not have a father. My father had died, and there was myself, my mother, and my two younger sisters in this village. And the town head honcho, again, there's always a head honcho in my some figure of authority that I'm up against in most of my lives. And so in this one, I saw him really clearly. He was dressed in like the full Quaker garb, and he told my mother she had to get married because she needed to have a man in the household to keep things in line with the Quaker way of living. So anyway, my mother could not control me, and and I saw the scene where they were dragging me out by my feet from our house, and my mother was clinging my two sisters and crying, and I was like this wild animal. I was fighting, and they took me and they laid me down in the middle of the village, and it was kind of circular with the houses sort of facing into, like, huts, more like not full houses but log cabins and whatnot, facing into the center. And they laid me down and they put a board on me. And all the while, I'm just screaming and fighting and refusing to give in to them. And then each each member of the town was required to put a stone on top of the board until my body was crushed. And the so yeah. So the reason why I went into that past life is because, again, the same thing. I was trying to work one day and I couldn't breathe. It was like I couldn't breathe. I couldn't catch my breath. So I knew right away, it's like, okay, let's go to the past life where this happened. And so it was like there was this real heaviness on my chest. And then another thing was that in the 70s, I was watching a movie with a friend of mine, and there was a scene where they did this to this woman in New England. It was like a witch hunt kind of thing. And they did the same thing. They put the board on her, and they put the stones on her. And I was absolutely terrified. And my friend was just, I remember saying, it's just a movie. Like, what's wrong with you? And then when I was in England with my mom and my younger son back in 2010, we were in London, and there was this red door. It was one of the tourist sites, and the same thing happened to her. She was accused of being a witch, and they did the same thing. They put the board on her and they put the stones on her, and that was actually called stoning, to stone somebody. It wasn't throwing stones at them. You put a board on them, and then you put these stones on them until they were crushed. So again, the same thing, when I saw this plaque on this red door in London, and I can't remember her name. It's actually a pretty famous tourist spot in London. When I read it, I was overcome with grief. It was different from being terrified the first time I'd seen it with my friend in the movie, and then this time it was grief. And so all these things tie together, and the reason why I'm bringing them up is because in your own life, just think about